Hello, my friend. Today we are going to take a look at auto-publishing brand new products to the sales channels of the merchant's choice. So let's begin. Well, let's actually begin by adding another sales channel to our account here. Right now we only have online store, so we're going to add buy button. Why not? So let's install that. Products can be individually published to different sales channels, and the creation of product does not automatically take it to any sales channel in particular, except for perhaps the online store. Wow, we just saw a flash of Spanish. That was interesting. I saw German earlier. Anyway, so we're going to take a look back at our mechanic app, and we're going to create our task. We're going to auto-publish new products to certain specific all. Let's go with that. So we're going to be running when a product is created, and we are going to be performing a publishing related action. Now, to build out that action, I'm going to head over to the graphical app. It's kind of a pun. The graphical app is made by the GraphQL community, and I think anyway, Shopify's got a copy of it up here running, and it allows us to very easily create GraphQL queries and mutations. So what I want to do to begin with, let's go straight to it. We're going to run a mutation, and it's going to be to publish. We want to publish a publishable. If I hit parentheses here, it tells me what I can provide. I want to provide what will eventually be a product ID, and then here, we need to provide not the channel ID because that's deprecated, but the publication ID. Publication ID appears to be is under the hood the way that Shopify refers to sales channels. Under the hood, they're not sales channels, they are publications. So that's what we want to fill in right there. So this will be a product ID, this will be a publication ID, and then the result of a GraphQL mutation should always include user errors so we can see if something went wrong. Something related to the user's input. So I'll grab our mutation here. We'll create a Shopify action. Action Shopify. Yep. This will be our mutation. Okay, cool. Our ID is going to be the product's ID, or rather the product's admin GraphQL API ID. And we should be able to see that filled in, automatically right here. Mechanic is using the ID of the last product, the ID from the last product event update that it saw. So I'm mousing over here because if I click this, I'll be able to see everything that came in. And if you were to install Mechanic, you wouldn't see this. This is a copy of, again, the last products create event that Mechanic saw for this particular store. And this is how Mechanic generates preview data like this. Okay, cool. However, I don't want to rely on this specifically, so really quickly I'm going to say if event.preview, and I'm going to create a new product object, one that I know has one of these. And this is partly to make sure that the results of this task in preview mode are completely deterministic, and partly because if I'm being super honest, I think that if you've just installed Mechanic and you've never experienced a product's create event before, the preview data that comes through may not have the GraphQL API ID. And this is important because we need to make sure that we're providing an ID that looks like a real product global ID when we actually show or generate this action in preview mode. So anyway, moving on. We've got our product, we have our admin GraphQL API ID, now we need our publication ID. Here is where we need to ask the merchant for input. We need to say exactly which sales channels are you interested in. And then we can translate those sales channel names or publication names into IDs that we can actually provide right here. So let's begin by setting up an empty array. And let's take our next step of looping through a variable which doesn't exist yet. And I'm not going to call it publication names because even though that's technically correct, it's not correct as far as the merchant is concerned. And just by typing out this name right here, we see that a sales channels names option has arrived right up here, and that can be whatever I want it to be. So now I've got a publication name. Now we need to turn it into an actual publication ID. To do that, we're going to use more GraphQL. We're going to hop over here, publications. If I hit Command Enter, it fills in this boilerplate. I'm going to want the first, let's say 250. Cool. So we've got our two publications. If I add name right here, we'll see that that's the online store and the buy button. Perfect. That's exactly what I need. Now, technically, there's a bit of a hole here. If there are more than 250 publications, if I don't then request the next page, we'll be missing something. I have yet to see a store that has more than a handful. I know they're out there, but I'd be surprised if anyone's gotten over 250. If when it comes up, we'll address it. But for right now, we'll take this route. So first we're going to take that query and save it as a string. So capture, publication query. And this is how Mechanic makes available GraphQL queries. You take your string, which contains a query, and then you pipe it through the Shopify filter. And the result of that is something that looks like this right over here. For the sake of our preview event, we're going to adopt the method that we've got up here right down, we'll do it right down here. We'll say if event.preview, let me explain what we're actually doing. What we're going to do is say, okay, in preview mode, given that Shopify API access is disallowed in this particular context, we're going to manufacture a publication result that looks real so that the rest of the script can execute and generate a result that actually looks like a real plausible result. So we're going to grab this because we know that the result is going to look like this. This extension stuff doesn't matter. It's related to API request throttling. This is the stuff that we actually need for the task. So we're going to say capture publication results, publication result JSON. We'll paste this in. And I think this might be harmless to leave in, but let's replace it with stub data, or just a stub number. Cool, and then we'll say assign publication result equals parse JSON. Parse JSON is one of the filters that Mechanic adds in to make life a little bit easier. So we've got our set of publication results, and we can test that that has actually, or assert that that has actually worked by adding an echo action. Wow, my spacebar. I'm really excited about the new MacBook Pro being out because I'm so tired of this keyboard. Okay, so we've now proved that this actually, like our technique works because our echo is showing us all of this information, which resembles what we just saw in the GraphQL app. So I'm going to take that out. And now what we're going to do is say, we're actually going to do this in reverse. We're going to say for publication edge, and let me lend some context right here. So the structure of this data begins with a data attribute and then a publications attribute and then an edges attribute that contains an array of what are called edges, each containing a node and then an ID and a name, which means that the right thing to do here is to say for publication edge in result.edges, result.data.edges. And now we can say if, let's see, if publication edge dot node dot name, we need to go the other way with this. Let's give ourselves a little more breathing room here. Okay, cool. So if the array of sales channel names contains the publication name that we just pulled out of GraphQL, then we'll add it to the array. I think I have an array of publication IDs to publish to. Yeah, right here. Yep, I guess we already had an N4. Okay, fantastic. All right, now let's do a little bit of sanity checking. Let's say that the merchant has forgotten what the name of the sales channel actually is. We're going to say if publication IDs dot size is not the same as the size of the array of names that they gave us, we're going to kick back an error. All right, cool. So we've got some sanity checking here. All right, and now what we can do is say, hey, spacebar, for publication ID in publication IDs, we will generate a mutation. Now these mutations need to have unique names, so I'm going to create an alias on this side. We're going to call this publishable publish, and then we'll call it for loop.index. Yeah. Cool. This way, if we have 5 publications, the first one will be publishable publish 1, publishable publish 2 will follow it, etc., etc. That is really hard to say. And we'll use the ID right here. Awesome. Okay, cool. If I close this, I see that we have a liquid syntax error on line 62. Action Shopify. Well, that's for sure valid, so I wonder if we have something broken before that. Huh. Interesting. Oh, it's a GraphQL parse error. Okay, so something about this isn't quite right. For publication IDs. Oh, okay, publication IDs is probably still empty because we haven't actually done anything with the publication result JSON. Well, no. This is right, but right now our configuration is completely empty. There aren't any sales channels in here. And in fact, this is optional. We want to make sure this is required. Sales channel names array required. There it is, typo. Okay, cool. So now we're seeing the real problem, which is that we have no sales channel names. Also, we have a problem that we have 2 copies of this, which tells me that I didn't get the variable name right in both places, probably because of that typo. Yep, typo fixed. All right. So now we're missing our sales channel's name, so I'll add this here. I first want to test, well, let's start here. I'll test that our generated GraphQL actually works. So let's figure out what is wrong with this. All right, I want to find out what's wrong. Well, first I want to find out what this thing actually looks like. So let's replace this action with capture and then echo it. Okay, cool. Our problem is being refined or being clarified. So we found 0 existing sales channels because our test data right here doesn't line up with what's in the configuration. Now, the purpose of the test data is to always give us something that generates a valid result in preview mode. So I'm going to replace this with the first sales channel in the list. Yep. Okay, cool. I'm going to remove this one for the time being. Yeah, let's start there. So we still haven't we still haven't found a matching sales channel given that name. So let's find out what's going on. Here's our comparison as we loop through our edges. So maybe let's start here. action, echo, and then let's grab the publication name. Let's make sure that we're actually getting through this part of the task. We're still having that error. Okay, cool. Let's comment that out temporarily. Wow. Auto indent is having a fun time. Okay, so the issue is that we're generating an empty mutation and also that we're not getting through this properly, which tells me that the publication result variable is maybe off. Publication result dot publications. Okay, cool. So that was my mistake. I went straight from data to edges instead of going through the publications point. There we go. Okay, now things are looking much better. We have our publishable publish one with a product ID and a publication ID. This all looks perfect. Okay, let's get this comment back out. Wonderful. And let's turn this back into a Shopify action. Awesome. Okay. Now I think we're gonna have an issue if I add one more here. Yep, cool. That's because there's only one publication in our preview data and there are two in the configuration. I have a choice to make. I can either update this so that we have one piece of test data, one piece of preview data for every single publication that's configured, or I can add some hackery down here to make sure that this error doesn't appear in preview mode. That latter option is a bad option because I really want the rest of this task to behave exactly as it would with live data, except in preview mode. So what we're going to do is the first option, which is to say for cool. And this will be a JSON error because we need a comma in between every object. So unless for loop.last. And here I've made a choice to prefer liquid indentation rather than JSON indentation. It's fine. So over here we now have, if I expand this, two publication mutations. One to publish the product to the first thing I've configured, which doesn't exist, but it's fine. And second, to publish it to the other publication which I've configured. And if I remove one of these, we drop down to only a single mutation, which is perfect. So what I'm going to do here is test this by saying, I'm going to test this using real data by saying that I want to publish to the online store. I'll hit save. Now because we've generated a preview action that resembles what Mechanic will actually do with this task in real, when we have real data to work with, Mechanic has been able to conclude that we need more access. So I'm going to grant access here. It's going to ask me for something publishing related and probably something public related. I'm sorry, product related. Products, publications, products, and collections. Collections we don't care about, but it comes with the territory. So we'll update the app. We'll head over to products here. And as soon as I create a product, we should see some activity showing up here. Bum, 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 bum. Awesome. Now this is slightly problematic because I've accidentally created this thing in an already published state, as I'm just realizing. So if I hop over here, it looks like it totally didn't care. It still generated that publish, and here we are. So now I have a choice. Again, I can detect whether or not the product has already been published and omit the IDs, or I can not do that. So here's what I'm choosing. I'm going to do that, but first I'm going to prove that this thing actually works, because if you would like to stop watching after that point, I would like to allow you to do that without missing anything important. Going to make sure this is not published beforehand. Hit save. And if I head back to the task itself, we should see in just a second that our other product was created and that we will have published it. Probably. And we're waiting. There it is. Cool. We published. And if I head back over here and I hit refresh, we should see that it is available on one of 2 channels and apps. Right? On one of 1. Not sure why it says 1 of 1. Not sure why this was in Spanish briefly again, but that's all right. Okay, cool. We're basically done, but I'm going to take the extra step of making sure that we don't do any publishing that is unnecessary. So for that, we're going to head back over here. We're going to query for our product, and let's take a look at this product specifically. And we're going to look at published on publication. And we just provide a publication ID. I guess I have one of those, don't I? Let's look at this data. We're looking at this publication ID right here. Okay, cool. So all I'll have to do then is repeat this line for every time that we've got a publication specified. Now, same thing applies here. This needs to be unique within the product response, within the product node object. So what we'll end up with is something that looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So let's go back to our task and get that rolling. Okay, so we're building up our publication IDs. And here are our set of publication IDs. Okay, so here is where we're going to start making our decisions. Assign publication IDs for publishing. And here what we'll do is copy IDs from our other array into this one as we determine that the product has not yet been published to that publication. So let's begin. Wow, this is really having a difficult time with auto indent. Capture. Okay. And then here is where we loop through our set of publications. Or publication IDs, rather. Now, there's a thing that I should clarify here. So here we have to specify that we're looking for the admin GraphQL API ID, and here we don't. It's just a normal publication ID because this product representation comes from Shopify's legacy API. And it's the same kind of information that they send along in their webhooks, which is why we have to be explicit here and say that we're taking legacy representations of data and we're bringing them over into the GraphQL realm. That's functionally what's happening here. Whereas our publication IDs have always come from GraphQL, so there's no need to say, from this GraphQL, I need GraphQL data, because it's all GraphQL to begin with. Let's add that in. Okay, cool. Pass that through a Shopify filter to get some real data. And as before, this is data that we are going to fake in preview mode, but only in preview mode. Appeasing this bug in auto indent. All right, cool. And we're going to use the same technique that we used up here, where we repeat this block for every single element that we care to. add in a comma unless we are at the very last element. And I want to make sure that I did this part with our preview data up here as well. Did I do that? Oh, wait. Oh, that wasn't relevant at all. Yeah. Cool. We still need to loop through and repeat this every single time, but we didn't need to add a counting integer at the very end previously. So we are all set here as far as our product result is concerned. And we can assert that looks the way that we expect by saying action echo product result. It looks like I've failed in my capturing somehow. Oh, okay. There's an error that I was seeing back here. Fix that. All right, we have this here. If I add one more, I should see a second one appear. Perfect. And a second publishing occur down here. Perfect. All right. So now echoing is obviously not what we want to do with that. So we're going to remove this and say, what do we want to say? We are looping through for published in, no, let's see. So these results are in order of the original set of publication IDs, which means that I can start with this loop and be in the right place. You can say, let's see, we need to retrieve the specific item from this list that corresponds with the index in the loop. So what we're going to do is actually basically this. We're going to say capture actually I don't love that syntax. We're going to say assign key equals, I feel better about that. Okay, cool. Assign published equals product result dot data dot product and then the key. And then if it is published, actually no, unless it is published, we want to add the publication ID to our list of IDs for publishing. Okay, sweet. Wonderful. Okay, so to recap, what we're doing here is checking in our product and saying, hey, for all the publication IDs that we know about, were you published on that publication? We manufacture some data for preview mode. And over here, we loop through our original set of publication IDs. We reestablish what our key was for that piece of data, and then we say, hey, was that true or false? Unless it was true, or to put it another way, unless the thing was actually published, we're going to stash that publication ID in our list to use later. And here's where we're going to use it, the part where we actually generate our set. Now this is important. We want to make sure that this doesn't happen if there are no publication IDs to use. So I was going to use an unless, but what I'm actually going to do is this. If this equals empty, adding that message because it's always better to see something explicit and intentional than to see nothing and wonder what happened. So when a product is created, we have nothing. All right, cool. Let's find out what's going on there. Oh, okay. What we found out is that it's actually working. Our test data simply returned true for everything, which means that there's no publishing that needs to actually happen in this context. If I change this to false, we're going to see an unsupported value, naturally. Encountered an unsupported value at publication IDs for publishing. Maybe I didn't initialize that? Maybe I didn't create that variable. Yeah, oh, there we go. I created it too late. All right, when a product is created, we perform our publishing and we're good to go. If I add another one, I should be all set. Perfect. Okay, let's test this thing. Let's begin at the very beginning by saying that we've provided bogus data. I'm gonna duplicate this. We're gonna create a whole bunch of copies here. Let's hide advanced so we can see more stuff. Cool. A few seconds ago, we had an error, and that error was a GraphQL error. Oh, interesting. Our query must have run before we did our check about whether or not we should proceed. So that's important. Let's go back here. And it looks like we generated the error, but the rest of this code actually began to run. That's interesting. Let's scope this thing. Capture product query. Okay, cool. Come on. Apologies for the jumping around. All right. Now this way, any of this should only happen if we found the correct number of publications. So let's close this, let's save it. Let's head back here and let's retry that run now that we fixed that bug. And we're back. Okay, cool. We only found 0 existing sales channels. Check your test configuration. Perfect. I'm gonna go back, we're gonna check our test configuration. Inline store, that's what I actually care about. Save, head back here, retry this for a third time. Our product was already published on all configured sales channels. Is that accurate? Yes, we have been published on that one channel. All right, given that we still have the retry option here, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm gonna say, I also care about publishing to buy button. So let's go back here, retry it a fourth time. Fantastic, and we've published to our remaining item. And if I head back over here and hit refresh, we should see that we are now available on 2 of 2 instead of 1 of 1. 2 of 2, fantastic. All right, let's do one last test where I create a product that will auto-publish to both simultaneously. Well, let's do both. We'll do published on everything, which is published on everything. And also, we will create something that has been published on nothing. Unchecking these and save. All right, cool. Head back to mechanic. Manage this task. Okay, cool. So published on nothing was published indeed to 2 different publications. Perfect. And then we're looking for published on everything, which should come through at some point here. Oh, you know what? We're not seeing it because nothing was necessary. And by default, mechanic hides events that did nothing. Perfect. So I can uncheck this and observe. There we go. The product was created. It was called published on everything. And nothing happened because, as if I click through to see, the product was already published on all configured sales channels. Awesome. Okay, we're done. My next step is to take this over to our task library so that anybody can use it, including you. If you have any questions, shoot me a message. Usemechanic.com. Have a fantastic day.